All right, we are about to start. We've got our panel here waiting to chat with you. We're about to start the panel on demystifying process, task mining, and getting the actual value for your transformation. Successful case studies from leading finance organizations. So here we have Neil Oswald. He's the former COO of WIF Financial. Welcome. We've got Mark Cryer, management coach, Capital One Bank, and we've got Dr. Sophia Pasava. Did I say that right? All right, I get points. President and CEO of Stereo Logic. So please give them a warm applause.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for coming. So late time, yeah, when everybody tired. I have happy 5 minutes to talk about company Stereo Logic that I'm proud of, all our customers proud of, entire team proud of. We try to do something real. We try to make something good for people. Not a lot of millions, not a lot of marketing, not a lot of noise with nice terminology. We wanted to create something what gives value to people. What you can take, use, and be happy, and we will be proud that we can do something. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. What I would like, in the beginning, I will talk about myself, not only because it's very pleasant, but because you will believe me, trust me more after I give you my bio, yeah? I believe it happened. Okay. Entire life I spent for modeling, my professional life. But not for modeling that I could be even nicer, yeah? But for modeling where we develop automatically very complex models of very complex processes and other objects, yeah? I worked in Europe and I worked, if you have slide, yeah, I worked in Europe and I worked in North America. In North America, I am with two my partners, Stan Pasov here and one more partner working now, Alex Ladezginsky. Yeah, we created two companies, Blueprint Systems, and we received more than 70 millions of investment in that company. And we have more than 2,000 customers there. But, okay, I give you a small secret. After that, we decided to make second company without investing and growing it organically. Because if you have investors, you don't have choice. I don't want to criticize somebody, but you know, all of you know, if you have investors, you don't have choice to make something good or to make money, yeah? I promised investors, I will make you famous. He said, you can be famous yourself, give us money. And we started another company, Stereologic, where we put our soul, not too much money, yeah, organically. Our first investment was from angel investment, 300,000. And we created this company. Before in Europe, I was chief of modeling organization where we work with best scientists, with the Academy of Science of many republics, yeah, Soviet Union republics. And we created something very, very interesting, control systems for rockets and ships. It means, why I'm talking about it? No, because I would like to explain that I know modeling, it's my life, okay? Now, come back to what we promised to explain, yeah? Okay, what we talk to many companies, yeah, very, very serious companies in North America, and nobody knows what is process mining, what is task mining, what is process intelligence, what is automated business process discovery. Even Gartner made, I would like to say, very, very good report and many reports about what it is. And Forrester writing reports, and Celonis with 1 billion valuation, writing a lot about process mining, task mining. Who understands what is process mining? Who understands here in this audience? It's very key people, very high-level engineers. Do you understand somebody? What is it? How do you like it? Huh? So huge market. And why? Because so many terms, so many scientific, pseudo-scientific explanations that people lost. They don't know what to do. They need to make transformation projects. But instead of it, they try to understand what's process mining, what's task mining, what's the difference, what to do with all of it. Yeah? Yeah. And why we made this presentation. Okay, and we believe that tools that you use should be much easier than problems you need to resolve. I like very much, can I show you this lady? She came to us today at our table and said, I understood why we have problems with RPA, because we don't have digital twin. And we answered that digital twin should have vendors who try to sell you something, not you are. It's not, they blame themselves that they don't have something pseudo-scientific that can help them to have results. But it's big lie, guys, in industry, yeah? We need to have good, simple tools and have results from that tools. That's it. Okay, now we tried to develop this tool, and I believe we accomplished some results, and I believe our outstanding customers, yeah, actually outstanding because because each of our customers introduced something new, something what we do know. We restricted, all of us restricted, yeah. We have our picture of reality, yeah, but we have very, very strong and good customers, because not strong and not good don't buy our tool. Only people who understand buy. And they introduce a lot of interesting things additionally to what we created. And we will ask, yeah, Mark, yeah, maybe you are the first, give ideas how he uses, and Neil, how he uses at their companies, yeah? Thank you very much.
Yep, so my name is Mark. I'm from Canada, from Toronto. You can tell by the accent. Originally from the UK. And I lead the process engineering team for Capital One Canada. Just a little bit of background of Capital One. In the US, we're a full-service bank. In Canada, we're a monoline. We provide credit cards, predominantly for mid-market and underserved clients. Capital One's mission is to help people use credit wisely, to become lifelong savers and investors, and to transact with simplicity. It should be easy, both to make the transaction for the purchase they want to make, but also using our mobile app or our online banking, etc. And one of the ways that we measure that is the number of people in Canada that we transition from below 660 credit score to above 660 credit score every year. That's one of the ways that we measure ourselves, because when you get above 660 credit score, you change their life. The next loan that they get for a car to get a better job is going to be a lower percentage rate than they would have had if they'd been subprime. On the other side, while still meeting the expectation for our return on capital, of course, you know, we're not a charity. On the other side, on our employee side, we have a lot of 20s and 30-somethings both in our head office and our back offices. And one of the things we talk about with our associates is the amount of time they're going to spend in work during their career. And that was on a table before lunch. We were talking about this, and I mentioned this. Some people might look at this as a nice thing. Some people might look at it with dread. You're going to spend 77,000 hours in work over your lifetime. And 90% of it, I'm sure all of you in this room know that 90% of it is waste. Yeah, so go. Maybe we all should go to the bar and get a drink, because 90% of what we do, nobody cares about. And so the reason that I want to talk to you about what we've done with this tool is that it's helping us make our processes better for our customers and changing their lives above 660, and it's changing the number of hours, what our associates do with their hours in work, that it makes a difference for those people. A bit of background with me. I'm a manufacturing engineer by trade in the UK. I grew up in automotive. I was really lucky to get trained by Toyota. Was a customer of ours. Got to go to Japan. Met my wife in Japan. She's from India originally, and then I ended up in Canada. That's how I ended up in Canada, because she was Canadian. when I came to Canada, I was really interested in using this Toyota thing to work it in service industries. So I joined one of the big Canadian banks for a few years. Then I went consulting, and then I joined Capital One 10 years ago to adopt our version of Toyota production system, collaboration system with our associates. To that theme of transformational change, one of our components of our strategy is that it's very important that people are always changing, and so that change muscle doesn't get stiff. Yeah, and the way that we do that is by empowering our process managers, our data scientists, our BAs to analyze their processes, because as you all know, everything is a process. Yeah, if you're not part of a process, you should question why you're getting your salary in your bank account every 2 weeks, because everybody is part of a process somewhere. And so the way we like to do it is everybody is expected to improve the quality and cycle time and economics of their processes again, within their OKRs, and then some of those fit into transformational goal projects as well. But everybody gets to do it. So the way that we use this tool, the data mining tool, is the PE is the center of excellence. We own the tool, and then we help a particular VP deploy the tool into their area for a number of weeks to collect data, and then help them analyze it, and then we shut the tool down in their area. And they carry on with the data that we were able to mine. And then we go to another VP who wants to pay for it and use it there. So we only use the tool when a VP wants to pay to use it. The process I'm going to talk about is money movement back office. So there are a number of processes in there where, as you'll know, if you're in a financial institution, you have millions of payments coming in every day or every week. A number of those transactions do not match. They need to match as they come in. And when they don't match, you typically need a human being to investigate it to figure out what went wrong, why it didn't match. And then the other thing that you have high volumes for in institutions is the transfer of payments when people are closing accounts or opening accounts from one institution to another. We went and we sat down with the agents before deploying the tool. We explained to them that how the tool's going to work, and what you do, you go to a website, you type in the Stereologic URL, and then you download an agent onto the agent's desktop. That's what they do, and they press record on and off when you want to record the screen. And every second it takes a picture of the screen. That's all they have to do. That's all they have to do. There's we can create a red and green list of applications to record. So if they're going into Workday on their break to look at some of their benefits, we're not interested in that because, again, part of our values within Capital One, there are no bad people, only bad processes. Again, I'm sure I'm talking to the converted here. And so we demonstrate that because we tell them, when you go to Workday or you go to Facebook or whatever on your lunch break, it will not record it. We're not interested in what you're personally doing. We're only interested in the process work. So that's one thing we loved about the Stereologic tool, this red and green list. The other thing we loved about it is the ability to mask PCI data. And this is a deal breaker for Capital One. We are obsessed by both as a corporation and in Canada, you cannot record customers' personal data and store it with no good reason. That is against the law. And so we cannot just go and mine processes in our back offices that hoover up with it all of that PCI data. And so the neat thing, the secret sauce that we loved about Stereologic was as it captures these screens, you train it in a datum process where the PCI data is going to be, and it blanks it out as it records it. So we don't have to worry about it. And so we love that. We were able to, on this particular project, we recorded for 3 weeks on all 3 shifts of the back office. Back in the day, before COVID, before we did this, I would have had to get on a plane to go to our back offices, or my team would have to get on a plane to go on back offices. We would have recorded over a 2-week period, side by sides, for 8-10 hours a day. Or we would go in on the night shift because, as you know, especially if you're doing contact center work, the calls that come in at 2 o'clock in the morning are very different. Sometimes it's just seniors looking to talk to somebody. Very different from the calls that come in at lunchtime or at 5 o'clock after people get off work. And so we go in at all the times of day and night, and on weekends and during the week, so that we can really understand what we would call again, so I'm sure some of you know, the Gemba, yeah, the place where activity happens. This software was a revolution, both to my team's well-being, yeah, and happiness that they don't have to leave home, and the amount of Gemba that we can go and observe. Because we can record as many agents as we want for all 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day, for the number of days that we want to work here. And the way that we base the number of days is based on the velocity of the process. Yeah? So if it's a 60-second process, we'll only record for a few days, maybe a few different days in the month to pick up cyclical, weekly or monthly activities. Or if it's a longer process, one we've just finished is our complaints process, where it takes about 15 days for us to receive, investigate, and come back to a customer on a complaint. But there's about 8 hours of work in that 15 days. And so we'll record for the 15 days. The Stereologic software will identify the same case being picked up and put down over that 15-day period. And then we can knit it together so we can see that there is less than 8 hours of work and when that work was done. When we get the data coming out, we have 3 strategies that what we do with the data. The first one is the lowest fidelity, and it's not rocket science. The software will create flowcharts for you automatically, and for each flowchart step, you will get the screen that the person was working on at that step. So we're able to produce far better training procedures from the information we get from the software. And the reason that's important for us is because on some of our back offices around the world, if you come and get a job as a Capital One agent in those locations around the world, and you spend about a year with us, you become hot property for other back offices because of the way that we train you. And so we do have a level of attrition because people just get poached so much, you know. And knowledge goes with those people, obviously. And so we've been able to produce far better and include that into, if anybody knows Khan Academy, our approach to training is we're developing on-demand video. We don't use YouTube, but on-demand videos indexed for people to learn and understand what part of the process they're working on. And we use the screens coming out of Stereologic to create that visual training environment, rather than being in the 21st century and writing War and Peace in Word. You know, we don't need that anymore. Our second strategy is to understand the variability in agents, and so we monitor for non-standard process steps to a datum process that we put together, so we can see where people are doing things out of what we expect to be the standard design process. And that's not necessarily right or wrong. You know, what it is it's a question of why, and we're able to go and start doing our 5 whys on that. We also monitor for standard deviation of the number of same process steps executed multiple times within a process to see variation at each process step along the process, and we monitor for standard deviation for cycle time across those steps, across the agents. So we can see the best person from a time perspective, and we can see the slowest person from a time perspective. Then we can go back, double click, and understand, is the best person's time still good quality? Because that's not, as we know, that's not necessarily the same thing. Once we confirm that it is still good quality, we can then take the way that they do it, I'm sure you all do this, take the way they do it, bring it out, codify it, and then train the whole team to uplift that productivity with no delay in lead time for waiting for any technology to change or to be written or codified or whatever. So that's strategy 2. Then strategy 3 is coming to our tech, and we're in early days with it, coming out of the Stereologic information that we've been getting, because we're just going into our 4th project. But what we intend to do is either use it to justify capacity from one of our teams in our software studio to develop small-scale RPA between systems, simple copy and paste, that sort of stuff. Or in Capital One, we use our own in-house built proprietary customer relationship management software. And so we have all of our development teams that are constantly building features for that connect into our online banking. And so if we've got the right numbers that come out of Stereologic on those tasks, we can go forward with a proposal to have those features brought into the online customer relationship within our back office. One of the nice things I like about that as a individual, as a team, as the leader of the team, is that before we had this, and we're in discussions now with some of the tech teams, before we had this, it was far more subjective on whether we had justification for that feature or not. You know, it was far grayer. Now, if we can tell whether the numbers are going to work just from the data we get out from the Stereologic tool, and so there are some items we're not even bothered. We don't even have to bother wasting our time or wasting the tech team's time, because we know it's just not going to cross the hurdle. Whereas the other ones that are getting across the hurdle, we have a really good conversation on priority. So this is an example of some of the reports that come out of Stereologic from what I talked about. So on the left-hand side, it's giving us all of the different task steps a particular person was doing in sequence across those dates, with gaps when they were away from their computer. And you can hover across those, and it will pick up, you know, which tasks or applications they were using. And on the right-hand side, you can see the different processes, the queues that they're working, the volume that they recorded on that particular recording period, the case count, and then how many hours was used, the percentage overall of the time, and then the average handle time for each of those projects. So we can just Pareto that to figure out where we're going to go hunt for our opportunities. Like I said, you also get the swim lane generated. For each of those task boxes on that swim lane, we have a screen that we can see what was the agent doing at that box. But that screen is blanked from any PCI data. In the bottom one, we can see and look at that. That is horrendous, isn't it? You know, everyone should be going to get therapy after looking at that pie chart. I certainly had a heart attack when I saw it. The range of applications that those poor people, remember that 77,000 hours? Those agents are working their way through those different applications in every single day coming in to do that, you know, which I hate. You know, I'm not happy with. Within the strategy too, where we're looking for the best and slowest agents, we're also looking at Tim Woods. So I'm sure you all know Tim Woods, 8 types of waste. Again, very often we find that when we identify waste, Tim Woods waste, it is a lo-fi solution that we can implement to remove that waste. We don't have to go to that third strategy, tech strategy yet. We can squeeze benefit out of that strategy too in the near term, whilst we queue up for capacity and then building of the tech changes that we'd want to take. As you can see, for this money movement area with the queues, almost 30% that we identified in terms of being able to reduce our FTE by. We might have got that sort of percentage at a headline identification on our old way of doing it, you know, where we would go to the contact centers. But once you double click on that estimate, we wouldn't have traditionally had the same level of granularity that the software gives us. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Mark. So Mark just showed you tons of data coming out of a technology that records what people do across applications and then gives you insight into that data to actually make change happen. And Sophia started with her presentation talking about how she's passionate about giving back value to people and making it easier for people to use and making it better for people to just do real process task mining type of activities. So I think if you pause on those slides, you'll see that it actually is very real. I was one of the first customers that bought Stereologic in 2008. That's how old I am. Don't hold that against me. I'm an old guy. But I then have used it at 4 other places. As I moved in my career, I said, I got it, I need it, go get it, and we do it. And so I've used it at 4 different locations, 4 different financial services companies in various use cases. Because what I do when I use this tool is I save all the analytical work. If you think about backing up the truck of process analysts from Deloitte or E&Y, and I used to be an E&Y consultant, you'd spend 6 months documenting processes and still get it wrong. Because when you interview people, you don't actually get the story of the edge cases. You get the main case, but then you don't understand all the deviations around that happy path you get. And mostly you get it right. But if you think about when you're doing automation or re-engineering, if you have a third of your data that's not included, how can you possibly do a proper automation or do a proper future state design or do a proper change plan? If you don't have that good information from good process mining and task mining, you actually can't make the change successful. Then you get into fights with tech, your requirement documents crap, get in fights with the users, you don't really understand my business, and just imagine that dialogue is just a big waste of time. So the case I'm going to talk to you about right now is a case where we were at a major bank, and I worked there, but I wasn't in this project. But what happened was the project was a big failure initially. And it was meant to bring on clients and onboard clients across all of our products. And what happened was the tech boys went, it's there, use it. And the business people went, it doesn't work. And the sponsors went, let's just step away from this so we don't get fired. And we needed an answer. So I suggested to the sponsors that they bring in Stereologic to actually record what is really going on, make it fully transparent, so that a productive dialogue could happen between the business sponsor, the tech boys, the ops boys, and the business people, and the poor client service agent in the middle could stop being crushed by this new piece of software because it wasn't working. And it worked out pretty well. So the employees were unhappy. They had very, very high impact on the client experience, very high impact on the employee experience. People were getting fed up. And despite end-to-end testing and lots of testing, it still wasn't working. And the workarounds were not well designed. They were solving the symptoms of the problem, not the real problem. So you imagine they were trying to fix something, they'd fix it, and it wouldn't really solve it. So for about 6 months, they tried the old traditional approach, and then we finally got them to look at it the right way. So using the data from Stereologic, we started to think about what was really happening inside the application. Was it a training issue for the people using the app? Was the screen badly designed? Was data not moving the way it should? Were the requirements misspecified? All that stuff. But you had a good conversation because of the data that Mark showed you. You could actually say, it's screen number 42 on process step number 7, and the data is wrong. And you could actually fix it. So it really worked out. And so if you think about it, you could then classify the errors by the type of errors. User errors, okay, we need to do some training. System errors, and the IT guys like this stat, only 2.2% of the errors were their problem. Screen delays, messaging between and all that, and delays, which calls things to timeout in front of a customer. And then cases getting started and ending, 22%. And so by doing this Stereologic survey to make everything transparent, to get the data out in front of everybody, they were able to eliminate the 95% of the errors down to 0. And then we also used the documentation, as Mark says, to create Word documents with screenshots to do proper training. I loved that feature in 2008. It's only gotten better since then. So I don't have to write manuals anymore. Basically, you record what the good people do, like Mark said, you got a manual. And you've got a process map that relates to a manual, relates to a screenshot, relates to the data that so you've got it there. So I don't have to write training manuals anymore. If I want to change my processes, re-record it after you've changed the process and you've got a new manual. Okay? This, by the way, saved the bank $15 million, which was not cheap at the time. In the scale of the project, it was a big deal. 15 million, and we changed the way we serve customers by 22%. You probably can't read it very well in these colors, but by 22%, we improved what we did in front of the customer. So great outcome. And that's about it. We take some questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That was brilliant. Any questions that you can think of? It's hard to follow that. Maybe you need a moment to think.
Is this a data logging tool?
There's-
I apologize for the stupid question, but I'm
No
trying to
stupid
understand
questions.
if it's a,
There are stupid answers, not questions.
what I was trying to understand is if it's a data logging tool, but I know it's obviously more than a data logging tool, and why I was thinking about that.
What I criticized most of all, because instead of tools, you have some science around tools. Logging, not logging, it's not your problem, should be. It's problem of vendors, yeah? But it's, I am understandable. No, if I can finish,
go ahead,
yeah?
go ahead.
Yeah, but instead of actual value, you have some scientific pseudoscientific knowledge, yeah? Yeah, process mining tools, classical tools, yeah, promise and sometimes do that they extract logs that already exist from database and other IT systems, yeah? But it's not only extract these logs, you need to extract them and after that make order from them. To make order from them, you need to have consulting division from company to spend 6-8 months. And after that, you see that something does not work. In our case, yeah, what we do, we don't extract logs. We generate logs automatically. First week you have logs after you started. Based on monitoring what people do. We generate it automatically. And that logs reflect reality, not what scientists, analysts think about logs from IT systems.
The reason I was going down the data, whether it was data tracking, data logging, is because initially, as I was listening to the presentations, I was thinking, if I'm an employee, wouldn't I be concerned that everything that I'm doing is being tracked? And when am I going to get fired for how many coffee breaks I've taken today versus yesterday, et cetera?
Yeah.
So I was like, there has to be more than this, so I'm missing something, hence the question. Thank
Great
you.
question. Great question. And data logging is like every keystroke, every activity being captured. So it does that in the context of the process. And when I did this in the 4 other organizations, I basically say, you're not going to get fired. We're not going to terminate anybody. We're doing this to create capacity, and you're going to help us solve it. So a good example, one of the examples was I recorded 4 people, and they all supposedly did the same job, the same process, the same way. When we recorded them, we found out they all did the process mostly the same, but not the same way entirely. And so I asked the 4 people, I said, here's your recording, here's your recording, here's your recording, here's your recording. Get in a room, figure out what the best way to do this is. The 4 of them got in a room, and there was some fur flying, for sure, about who had the best idea, and who, but the data didn't lie. Every organization I've done this in, I got to make sure you're not going to get fired. We're not trying to, but I do create a Bob and Wow list. The best of the best and the worst of the worst. And I just create a little statistics about who's doing the best and who's doing the worst. Now you may say that's pretty clever or mean, depending on your perspective. But by doing a Bob and Wow list, all of a sudden the Bobs are exemplary in helping the Wows, because it's social, right? And the Wows are self-correcting, finding out what the Bobs are doing, right? So it's actually not maniacal or mean, it's just, we got to improve our performance, let's publish how it's going, and you create a scorecard, and people self-select. Some people do self-select out because of the transparency, but I'm not firing them. I'm just helping them do their jobs better. Mark, got a comment or anything?
Yeah, I'll just add, I absolutely agree. That's the way we choose to approach it in Capital One. We can't hire enough people. We have a really bad, really good problem. You know, we cannot hire enough people, so we want to make them more efficient so we can use them. Having said that, in a previous life, I've been in positions where we are going to close down back offices. And in my, I've been in that experience in the UK in manufacturing. I've worked with union shops as well, and I found in both of those scenarios, honesty and respect. I have not had a problem with people, even if we're going to close down their centre. We were up front with, the management was up front with them. This is what's going to happen, but you're going to be looked after. But we want to do this in a professional way. And it's amazing. Most of us as human beings want to be professional people. And those people were happy. Back then, we would monitor back old school PE style, it was before I came into Seriologic. But it's been my experience that people will still want to live and work in a professional way when you approach them in a respectful, open, trustful way as well. That's my experience.
I want to come back to the data logging thing. So I'm old enough that I actually went back in a prior iteration before Stereologic and captured log files and manually knitted them together to create instrumentation on an end-to-end process. Okay? And I'll tell you, that was a lot of work. But it didn't yield me the insight that I can now get out of Stereologic, because you can get the screenshot, the data, the screen movement, and the process map. Whereas if I just have a log file, I have a bunch of events, and then I got to figure out what those events mean. And some of them are system events, and some of them are, you got to do a whole bunch of interpretation. So Stereologic's got the smarts to interpret all that, so you get the right end-to-end process view when you look at it, if that helps you understand that. Oh, another question there?
Yeah, you had a general question. So I think it's great, obviously, from process improvement, you're getting better using software to do this, but has there ever been like an analysis done where, let's say, if you extract the absolutely necessary human elements or interactions of the process, and even though the process is wrong, whatever downtime is in actually doing it the right way, has there been a point where you say, okay, maybe it's just cheaper to just do it wrong, but the robots are doing it wrong versus the people doing it the right way?
Okay, of course, you need to make optimization before automation, yeah? Of course, it's a major reason why 70% of RPA projects fail. Because we automate what we don't need to automate, what we need to improve, yeah? It's my answer, but I don't know.
I have a couple of phrases I use. I don't pave the cow path. So if I have an opportunity to look at what's currently happening and I can just see it's dead wrong, or is obviously not the right way, or we need the social interaction between the customer to get the better client experience, you don't just do it blindly. You think about the employee experience, what the employee is doing in their day job, and what the client is doing in that process, and you make a smart business decision about the best process. And it's not always the optimal, most efficient process. If the customer needs extra hand-holding to get through something, you would design it so they get extra hand-holding, right? And that's what you just designed. If the employee needs an extra tool to make it happen so they don't have a hard day, like a calculator or a tool, I put that in. So you actually think about the experience of both the employee and the client as you do this redesign. And don't pave the cow path.
As I think about sort of how this would work with a customer service center or any process that's in front of a screen the whole time, makes perfect sense. I'm curious for those processes that are partially on the screen and partially off the screen, how this sort of works. For a warehouse, right, a shipper is on the screen, but then the idle time might encompass going to get supplies, might encompass them just hanging out for 10 minutes, right? Like how do you start to bring in those outside the screen activities?
To answer to Mark or to Stan, if you would like.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to come to Toronto? Because I'm facing that problem. One of our next project. Rich Fairbank, who's the founder of Capital One, he has one of his sayings is that we're all risk managers in Capital One. So risk is not a job just for the business risk office, which is easy to say. When you come to Capital One, you'll see it. It's reality. And so our next project is we are not happy with the number of hours consumed in risk management governance activities by process managers, data scientists, BAs, or the business risk, or their interactions with the business risk office. So we're going to go and study that next. And that's one of the things we're thinking about, how are we going to do that? Because when the lawyers, for example, are doing their brainstorming, interpreting a new law coming through with compliance for what the regs are going to be and where they might hit up, which processes they might hit, they're not, to your point, they're not doing that on a screen. We haven't figured it out yet, but we're working on it. So if you've got any ideas, come see me. I'd love to know. I'd love to have ideas.
What I used to do was make up a dummy activity in the analysis stage to say, what were the people doing? And I'd use old-fashioned techniques to interview them and say, what were you doing? And I'd create a dummy activity so I could have a complete history. But you also get the team to tell you what really happened. You know, you got this gap in your data and go, well, what was going on? Oh yeah, Betty had a party and had to have cake and everybody went away for 20 minutes to go have cake. And you go, okay, good now.
So you can edit those process maps inside standard logic to add those outside steps?
You can add outside steps if you need to, or you can just subjectively, qualitatively make an adjustment in your analysis. And you don't get like every day, all day, 8 hours, right? Because you have people who have bathroom breaks, they have social activity, they do some shopping, they do some hit home care duties, they do all that stuff. So just know that's your measurement and then work your day.
So I have a question. For the different use cases, so I get where there's a widget and people are processing the widget through the life cycle and there's a unique identifier. A lot of our processes are done, they may be sequential, but it's like batch processing. Does that present a challenge for you? Where there's probably not a unique identifier on the screen to stitch together the process?
We give opportunity to answer our SVP of product. Stan Pasov, okay.
That's actually a great question, by the way. So the algorithm that we are using actually, can you hear me? Oops. So the algorithm that we're actually using to track information within one person or from person to person is actually very interesting. It takes into account that widget is not always present. Now, even if it's not always present on the screen, it's always assumed, right? Otherwise, it's not a process. But sometimes it's just not obvious. Now, the algorithm kind of takes into account the intersection. So let's say if, let me just use account number as a key ID, right? So if account number is your key ID, and it's present on some screens, but it's also, like on these screens, it also, let's say, it has your name and, I don't know, the type of product that you're requesting from the bank. So let's just stick with banking example. Now, the next time it will look for the screens where other data is present. So let's say your name, your product requested. So even if that key widget is not present on those screens, the algorithm will trace those data intersections and kind of stitch them together and consider them as part of the same process.
Thank you.
It's quite powerful.
It assumes a prerequisite of knowing the process to some extent first, no? Because otherwise, where would you know to put the agents?
So the way that we deploy it is when we go and we talk to like I said, we talk to the agents about we're coming and what we're going to do. And then our very first session is a slow walkthrough of what they think the data process steps are that we record out. And what we also do in that activity is identify the PCI, in our case, identify the PCI fields that the stereologic folks then program in. So as it records that, it blanks it out, and it's matching to that datum process.
Capital One is very difficult customers. They have highest level security. But with beta customers who don't have it, we usually spend 2 hours before we start do something. Yeah, 2 hours. That's it.
On that note, I think we're ready to wrap.